Hello, BookTube. We are reading our Bring Up the Bodies by Hilary Mantel. This is the second volume in her Thomas Cromwell trilogy that started with Wolf Hall. And it is the story of Thomas Cromwell, the lawyer, the leg breaker, the general all-purpose fixer, and later counselor for King Henry VIII. So this is Tudor historical fiction. We are very, very close to Cromwell's own point of view. We almost never vary from it even a little. And we are in the year 1535. We're going to read the second part of this book, which is called Crows. The first part was called Falcons. Now we're into Crows. And we're at 1535 when Cromwell's fortunes with King Henry are very much assured. They are on the rise. King Henry has put aside his rightful wife, Queen Catherine of Aragon, and married and raised to the queenship Anne Boleyn, who has so far failed in her promise to give Henry a brace of healthy sons. She's given him a healthy daughter, but that's it, and has shown very little in the way of kindness or allure or pregnancy since then. And it's not necessarily a friend of Cromwell, as he tells us in the first section of this book. He is temporarily on the outs with the Queen, even though they should be allies. They have, later on in the book, they have a rather tense exchange that perfectly encapsulates their relationship with each other. When, out of arrogance and maybe a little insecurity, she tells him, the son of nobody, a blacksmith's son from Putney, that which is made can be unmade. And his response is, I agree entirely. Because it's true for her as well. She has already shown the world that her rightful queen can be displaced. So she's in no position to think that her position is secure. But in the first part of this book, we don't so much care about that. We don't so much care about court intrigues because we're not at court. Henry and his followers are in a summer progress throughout the countryside, and it has been idyllic. Not for Cromwell, who, in Hilary Mantel's telling, works all the time. He's constantly getting dispatches from London, is constantly working at the king's business while the king is out enjoying himself. But the king is not as young as he used to be. He is still a magnificent figure. In Cromwell's telling and Mantel's telling, he is a magnificent figure, not even entirely human. Which is usually a gripe that I have with Tudor fiction, is that Henry is made into a caricature. He is made into a character in this book, but it's such a grand caricature that I don't so much mind most of the time. And he's definitely given weaknesses. In this second section, that wonderful summer is coming to an end. The king says that he wishes it could be always August, but nevertheless, they have to return to London. And that means that we will meet more of our cast. We will meet Cromwell's enemies, for instance. Lord Norfolk. We will meet Stephen Gardiner. We will meet the Queen. We will meet Anne Boleyn. And thanks to a secret mission here in this section of the book, we will also meet the Queen that was. We will meet Queen Catherine as well. Cromwell will go and visit her. Her health is uneven in this section of the book, raising suspicions in court that she might die. She has been sent from court to a drafty, damp manor house, where she's kept in style, but largely as a prisoner. She knows perfectly well that she's a prisoner. When Cromwell goes to visit her in this section of the book, he proposes to her something, an idea that has not crossed her mind, which is that she's to blame, not just for her own exile, but for the split in the church that Henry enacted in order to marry Anne Boleyn. That she's responsible for it. She, of all people, daughter of Catholic Spain, that if she had been circumspect, seen which way the wind was blowing, agreed, and voluntarily moved to a convent somewhere to be an abbess or whatever, she would have been universally honored, and Henry would not have broken with the church. We're told, there's a wonderful phrasing here that I want to find. When Cromwell puts that to her, Hilary Mantel comes out with just a great way to word it. It's just worded so perfectly. Let me see if I can find it. He puts that scenario to her, and we're told, there is a pause while she turns the great pages of her volume of rage and puts her finger on just the right word. What you say, Cromwell, is contemptible. But we're going to see it sticks in her mind. We get to meet all of these people, and I have to say that I think if you're reading this along with me, you might agree that the mechanisms, the dramatic mechanisms of us meeting these supporting characters, are better done. They feel more natural in this volume, in this part of the book, than they did in the first part. Probably a little of that is unavoidable. Even though this is the second book in a series, you can't expect that all of your readers have read Wolf Hall. So probably a book like this has to start with a little bit more exposition than maybe you would want. I think it's masterfully handled in the first part, but there's a lot less of it in the second part. We've relaxed into a far more confident tenor of storytelling. We're meeting these people organically. And once again, a strong note in this section of the book is privacy. Are these diaphanous private moments that no one would ever record. We can't expect to ever have a recording of these things, but they probably did happen. And they feel incredibly intimate. They are one of the many ways that Hilary Mantel uses, I would argue the most effective way that she uses, to make these books feel like they are not historical fiction. Like we are so intimate with these characters. In the last section, we saw two moments like that, where one with Cromwell has Henry's hand on his shoulder as they just talk about the day that they've had. That's all. Just a simple thing like that. Not anything that would ever occur to anyone to record. And then at the end of the section, Cromwell comes downstairs early in the morning and sees Jane Seymour, the future queen, just staring out a window. He doesn't interrupt her. He just sees her, and she doesn't see him. Moments like that probably happened. And who knows what these characters thought about it. There are all sorts of moments in here in the book that are touching, that prey on future knowledge. So not only do these things reward you if you read all three, but they reward you if you reread them. Like, for instance, in that first section, Falcons, Cromwell is reflecting on the fact that he's not a young man anymore, and he says that he thinks on his best day, he thinks he probably has another good 20 years left in him. He has 5 years left, and he's going to be executed by the man whose hand is on his shoulder. He doesn't guess it. He's thinking only of natural death. That somehow, despite the fact that he has seen a million people be destroyed by this monarch and helped to destroy them, that won't affect him, that somehow that just won't affect him. And we get more of those intimate moments in this section. Mantel describes it really well in economic phrasing, as always. Henry sat whispering to him, "The planets, they're only witnesses." Yeah, those are the kinds of scenes that we see where no one's around, no one's recording this stuff. It becomes obvious to everybody. It became obvious in the first section of the book that Henry is becoming erotically fascinated with Jane Seymour, mousy little Jane Seymour. And Cromwell does not want to make a mistake. He wants to make sure that this is facilitated to the extent that is acceptable, given the fact that Henry is a married man with a pregnant wife. He still wants to facilitate it. He is visited from time to time in this book by the ghost of Cardinal Wolsey, his old advisor and father figure, who tells him, "I saw you, Crum, when you were at Elventham, scratching your balls in the dawn and wondering at the violence of the king's whims. If he wants a new wife, fix him one. I didn't, and I am dead." But we get the main import of this chapter, aside from introducing us to a lot of the rest of the characters, and also introducing the parlous state of Queen Catherine's health. We get two moments that bring into sharp focus our two main characters, Henry and Cromwell. And one is about Henry and one is about Cromwell. I thought I would read you both of them, not only because I want to draw your attention to another set of stylistic bookends, but also because I love reading Mantel's prose. I just love it. The first one is about Henry out in the countryside. Henry's summer, on the whole, has been a success. Through Berkshire, Wiltshire, and Somerset, he has shown himself to the people on the roads, and when the rain isn't bucketing down, they've stood by the roads and cheered. Why would they not? You cannot see Henry and not be amazed. Each time you see him, you are struck afresh by him, as if it were the first time. a massive man, bull-necked, his hair receding, face fleshing out, blue eyes, and a small mouth that is almost coy. His height is 6 feet 3 inches, and every inch bespeaks power. His carriage, his person are magnificent. His rages are terrifying. His vows and curses, his molten tears. But there are moments when his great body will stretch and ease itself, his brow clear. He will plump himself down next to you on a bench and talk to you like you were a brother. Like a brother might, if you had one. Or a father, even. A father of an ideal sort. How are you? Not working too hard? Have you had your dinner? What did you dream last night? I know that it's hindsight here, and this is historical reconstruction, but I think that's a real good idea of the power that Henry had. He obviously couldn't have been just an insane, bloodthirsty tyrant. That would not inspire some of the reactions that we see. I can live with that Henry. I like it. But we also get a glimpse of Cromwell. We've seen them before. That touching moment where he says that he thinks he has another 20 good years left in him. That's amazing. There's also a scene where he is totting up on paper all the manors and houses that he is accumulating as gifts or emoluments or whatnot. He's never visited any of them. He describes them in idyllic detail, the water wheels and the geese and the fish in the ponds, but he's never going to get to enjoy that kind of peace. When I was rereading those descriptions this time around, I was thinking of The Other Boleyn Girl by Philippa Gregory, which is about Mary Boleyn, Anne Boleyn's sister, who yearns for the countryside. She yearns for exactly those kinds of peaceful interludes and eventually does get them for herself. Decides to just get them for herself, rather than stay in the cutthroat rat race of court. But we get another glimpse of Cromwell here that I'll end with. He is Master Secretary, and he has resisted little. You can't resist as the king tells you, but he has resisted anything more than that. He's vice regent of church matters, but he's Master Secretary. He's not a lord. And he likes that because there's no official limits to what a Master Secretary is or is not able to do, what he should or should not legitimately interest himself in. And Cromwell likes that because he wants to run everything himself. And that's what we're told. No fees attached to the post of Secretary. The scope of the job is ill-defined, and that suits him. Whereas the Lord Chancellor has his circumscribed role, Mr. Secretary can inquire into any office of state or corner of government. He has letters from throughout the shires asking him to arbitrate in land disputes or lend his name to some stranger's cause. People he doesn't know send him tittle-tattle about their neighbors. Monks send accounts of disloyal words spoken by their superiors. Priests sift for him the utterances of their bishops. The affairs of the whole realm are whispered in his ear. And so plural are his offices under the crown that the great business of England, parchment and roll awaiting stamp and signet, is pushed or pulled across his desk to himself or from himself. His petitioners send him malmsey and muscatel, geldings, game and gold, gifts and grants and warrants, lucky charms and spells. They want favors and they expect to pay for them. This has been going on since the first came into the king's favor. He is rich. That is lovely. That is almost certainly true. That is certainly what happened. We also get a chance to meet in this segment to get presentiments of Cromwell's own household. His son, his nephew, Rafe Sadler, a young man who's in his household, more distant young men like Henry Wriothesley or Richard Rich, who will be known to readers of a different kind of Tudor fiction from A Man for All Seasons, where he is a worm, where he's dangerous, a turncoat, someone who brings down Thomas More. Of course, Thomas More is a villain in these books, so Richard Rich is not exactly a likable character, but he's not an outright villain. The Cromwell in these books is a prototypical working man's populist leader. He is an enlightened figure, so he wouldn't have a villain working for him, would he? And God forbid that you say that Cromwell himself is a villain. No, that absolutely isn't true. Another little neat little presentiment that I don't think is in this section of the book deals with Henry Wriothesley, who will betray Cromwell. He is instrumental in Cromwell's downfall. But there's a section in the next section of the book, I believe, where Cromwell is thinking to himself, well, I know that he's wavering. And I know that he has entree in the household of Stephen Gardiner, who is my arch enemy and wants me dead. But I can win him over. If I love him enough, if I include him enough, I can win him over. And we know, if you know history, that is a little sop to give you a smile, because you know that that is not only wrong, but precisely wrong. But that is the section that we're doing today. Things are only going to heat up from here because two things are on the horizon. Apart from all the other maneuvering around here, two things are on the horizon, neither of which Cromwell can make happen. They are both so-called acts of God. One is the old queen out in Kimpolton, allegedly dying, seeming in poor health. Will she live or will she not? As long as she lives, there is danger from abroad. Because she's the aunt of the Holy Roman Emperor, who is the most powerful person in the Western world. As long as she's alive, not only that, but she casts a pall over Henry's married life, his love life. There's that. There's the old queen. And Cromwell can't do anything about her unless he has her poisoned. He's not going to do that. This Cromwell's not going to do that. And the other thing is Anne Boleyn. Is she pregnant or not? And if she is it a boy? And will it live? So those elements are going to come to the fore in the next section. So we'll move on. We'll move on from there. I asked you in a video, and also I've got tons and tons of emails from people asking, should we just continue with this book? Continue talking about it? And the answer was an overwhelming yes, so we will continue. I don't want to hurry you. I don't want you to feel like you're hurried. So I probably won't do a different part of the book every day, unless you want me to. I would think I would give a few days in between parts, in case you're reading along. But we will move on to the next part next time. Looking forward to it. So I'll wrap this up for now, and I will see you then. Thank you, BookTube.